Welcome, idiots. So, this week we discuss dengue fever, gastric bypass surgery, freezing your fat cells. What? You can freeze fat cells? Yes, you can. What even is fat? What is body fat on the body? Elimination diet for dealing with issues and things like that. What even is cancer? Like, really, what is it? Misalignment, divergence, and balance, among many other things. It was a fantastic episode. Again, make sure you stay tuned to the end where we distill the nuggets, so to speak, and enjoy.
I'm just going to get right into it.
Well, we're ready to go, buddy. Let's get started. Welcome back, idiots. Today we've got another episode of Idiots Squared, where we don't even really know what we're going to talk about just yet. Daniel, Polska, how are you?
I've been really sick the last week. Today is actually the first day I'm feeling better.
Okay.
After last week's pod, right after we ended, I was getting ready to go to bed, and I just felt something weird, right? And what I hate doing is manifesting shit. Like, I don't want to manifest getting sick, so I'm just telling myself, "Nah, fuck it, I'm good." I wake up the next morning, and I'm really conscious of my body, right? So I'm thinking, I'm like, what seems to be the issue? And I told my wife, I said, I think I feel poisoned, right? And she's like, well, like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm the one that like gives you most of your meals, right? And my mom helps us do a lot of cooking. So what do you mean you feel poisoned? Like, you can't be saying shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not, obviously it's not from the food, but for some reason, it's just something in my body just doesn't feel right. I end up getting a fever. Okay. And 5 days go by and the fever hasn't subsided. Like, it goes up and down. It didn't get really high. The highest it got was maybe 38.4 degrees Celsius. Do you guys fudge Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
All right. So it got up to around 38.4. That was the highest. And the lowest was maybe 37.2, which I guess isn't really considered a fever, but it's not optimal body temperature. I think
Correct.
like 36.8, 36.9 is like the optimum range, I believe.
Yeah, it's where the body likes to be. Yeah, any deviations beyond that.
Yeah, so I just kept floating in between this 37.2, 38. And then after 5 days, my body breaks out in a rash, like everywhere except for my neck and my face. But on my body, my back, my hands, my feet, actually, you can't really see it, but it's the rash has subsided. Yeah, you can't see it on the camera. It's really difficult to see now. I have it on my feet a little bit still. But this rash just took over my entire body. At that point, I'm like, yo, like there's something serious, right? So we started investigating, and the only thing we can come up with was dengue. Have you ever heard of it?
Yep.
Okay.
The dengue fever.
Yeah, it's a viral infection you usually get from an infected mosquito, right? Infected mosquito bite, or an infected mosquito who bites you, and that's how it gets transmitted. And it's more prevalent in tropical climates or subtropical climates, right? It's not an issue that we have in Canada. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone getting dengue in Canada. But anyways, so we're not sure because we haven't got any tests done, right? And then so today's day number 8, and today was the first day that I had a good like fever rate. Well, I didn't have a fever. I had a 36.9 temperature. So finally the fever went away, but then it actually ended up coming back later on in the day. And I guess that's like a typical symptom of dengue, is that the fever goes up and down, up and down. But I went to to a lab today to get my blood test done, and we just wanted them to do like everything, just tested everything in my blood, and the lab results actually came back. And a good friend of ours, or a friend of the family, he's like a good doctor, and he read the results, and yeah, he came to the same conclusion that it is in fact dengue. So, dude, I have
Interesting, guy. You survived.
Well, I still have it. Right? Like I'm not.
Yeah, but
not
you're
in the
fighting
cure
it.
yet. Yeah. I am surviving. Yeah. And so he read my lab results, and my white blood cells are down. Right. My leukocytes. What's it called?
Yep. Leukocytes.
Yeah. Leukocytes are down. They're not like, completely out of range, but they're just slightly below the normal range. And those are the two, like one of the two things that they look at when they are determining what you may have. And yeah, I think he looked at something else. Don't remember what the third thing was, but he says, yeah, dengue affects everyone differently to different degrees. Luckily, it didn't affect me to a large degree where I suffered from, I think it's hemorrhaging or blood hemorrhaging. And that occurs because when your white blood cell count gets really low, your blood becomes more viscous and you bruise easily. You can have nosebleeds easily or any sort of type of hemorrhaging. That's why
isn't it non-viscous?
Oh, is that, it would be non-viscous?
Yeah. Like thinner blood equals bleed easier.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, you're right. And because of that, you need to stay away from non-steroidal anti-inflammatories because that can actually increase the risk of bleeding. So you need to look at medications that you can control your fever with and also reduce pain with, but they're not non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So paracetamol, I think that's how you say it.
Paracetamol, yeah, bro.
Paracetamol is what I ended up taking.
Paracetamol. Cuisine.
Fuck, start a list. We should get a list going over here of all the words I'm forgetting how to say.
It's a meld of your accent. Like it's because you are predominantly, like English speaking background, right? But then you've lived in all these different countries and you sort of have inherited or absorbed or osmosis part of the other cultures and pronunciations of words. It's very interesting. I like it. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Quick analogy, real quick. Sorry. So you know how you're saying your white blood cells are down and your leukocytes are down.
Yeah.
A really simple way to think about it is like your troops have been depleted, guy. Like you had all these troops on the front line, they've been hammered fighting off this dengue. And they're depleted a little bit. And that's essentially, why. That's one way to think about why they're down.
And one of the strangest symptoms I had was meat, pork, chicken. It started like tasting weird. And for some reason, I don't know what it was. I'd just be eating it. And I was like, this is not that good. And then when I would go to eat fruits and vegetables, they tasted like amazing. And I was thinking, man, maybe my body is telling me that I should be focusing my energy and trying to eat maybe fruits and vegetables and not concentrate so much on meat, right? Possibly. And then I started thinking like, yo, is veganism like a really progressive form of dengue?
I love how your mind works.
Do we have a cure for veganism? Like,
that's hilarious. So part of that might be the fact that, like the meat sources that you mentioned are actually like there's quite a lot of energy required to digest. Like they're laborious. Like red meat is known as being quite, there's more work involved in digesting it, right? Same as pork. Chicken's a little bit easier. Fish is even easier. But then the fruits and vegetables, specifically the fruits, like you've got like, supposedly, and where you are, I'm sure that it would be decent levels of vitamin C and other vitamins and minerals and nutrients. and also a very quick source of energy, so to speak. So it just might be that your body's sort of wanting that sort of quicker energy with some vitamins and minerals, or vitamins and nutrients, to help bolster its immune system and a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah. I will say that throughout the entire experience, I never actually felt that shitty. Like, although I had the fever and everything, it wasn't too bad actually. And I didn't suffer from any other symptoms, like no runny nose, no cough. I had like some body aches, but no sore throat. So it was just basically achy fever and the rash actually. But it wasn't until the rash where it clued in, where like, yo, this, I need to see. But like I said, from the get-go, I felt like there was like some poison in me. It just wasn't normal. It wasn't like a normal cold at all. Have you ever had dengue?
Never, guy. I've heard of people getting it, and typically the story is like really bad. Like their experience is not like your experience. Like, obviously there's similarities, but it's normally known as being really, really bad, like really harsh, like lots of like, fit, like you mentioned, fever, the night sweats, the like hot and cold, and just hammers people. Like they, lots of people end up in hospital with dengue fever. People die of dengue fever. I think it's a testament to your robustness, right? You're a physically active person. You're conscious about your health, you're conscious about your body. You're aware of all these different things. And, like we spoke about intuitive training and eating and all this different stuff, like you're quite in tune with your own body and its own needs. And when your body feels good. And so any small deviation from that is going to be noticeable to you because you're aware of it. I'm very similar in that regard. Like I love feeling great, and so when I don't, I notice it a lot. I notice that deviation. I often talk to people about this in the gym setting, which is like, your norm, like the body loves consistency in certain regards. Like you have to periodically challenge it, obviously, but it loves that consistency. And so you just get used to whatever you're predominantly feeling. So people go, I feel normal, or I feel great. And it's only when you start to improve your health and fitness and your output and your robustness that you realize how shitty you used to feel, if that makes sense, And so when you start feeling really, really good, like you've actually gone up the levels and you actually generally feel good, any little deviation you'll notice dramatically, and it'll feel like you feel like shit, even though you're feeling like shit is probably someone else is feeling good. Like it's all relative.
It is all relative. I agree. And our buddy who's the physician who read my lab results, he was saying the same thing. He's like, because you take such good care of yourself all the time, it's likely that it hadn't affected you to the level where it usually does. Because he was saying the same thing, like dengue fever is a serious viral infection where it fucks people up hard. And he said it affects people, the ones that affects people the most are the ones that are sedentary and eat an unhealthy diet, which is obvious, right? But I don't know if it is truly for everybody. But I think like the message here is that if you truly want to be healthy, right, it's something that you got to do constantly. Because and one of the huge benefits of taking care of yourself day in, day out is if you do end up traveling and getting dengue, like I did, it's not going to hospitalize you, right? So there is like a huge benefit.
What you just said is absolutely true. So it's a lifestyle. It really is. And part of the reason why it is this, like you have to get used to doing it all the time, is because you never know when the struggle or the adversity or the volatility is going to hit. You never know when a curveball is going to get thrown at you. So you always have to be doing it, always have to be building it in some regards, or maintaining it. Because you just can't predict the future. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to get sick in the next few months. I'm going to get healthy before that, right? Like you just always got to be doing it so that you're always ready, so to speak, or always as prepared as you can be. But yeah, no, that's awesome. And like, that's a very quick turnaround too. So what was it this is day 8 and you're starting to feel substantially better?
Yeah, like my energy levels have are coming back. Like I had a lot more energy today. The fever subsided. Like even though I had readings of 37.5, I didn't feel like I had the fever today. And I had moments during the day where I didn't have a fever as well. We just came back from a walk with our buddy. That he was the one that read the test results. He's actually here with us still. And
Okay, you got rocking a personal doctor now?
Yeah, dude, it's fucking dope. You know, and he's like a seriously good doctor. Like he's like a well-known guy too. So
okay.
in Cali, yeah, he's an anesthesiologist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So those guys study and they know a shit ton because you gotta.
Yeah, you're fucking with people's states.
Yeah,
in their life.
It's the most dangerous part of the surgery.
Yeah, big time.
So yeah, he actually studied in Cuba, and Cuba is a great place to study medicine because you are, what's the word? You just get fronted. Oh, goddamn, exposed. Yeah, you get
Liability.
exposed to many different diseases and sicknesses there. So it's a really good place to study medicine. So they say.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Okay. So they've got a lot of diversity, so to speak.
Yeah. I just remember something I wanted to ask you when we were talking about this. Have you heard of these I think it's called a gastric bypass surgery?
Yeah. Okay, so yes. Are you talking about the lap band where they cut off or like they shrink, like they restrict part of your stomach?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're cutting out a portion of your stomach and reconnecting, or they're constricting a part of the stomach, like you said. I don't remember.
I think there's both. I think the gastric bypass surgery might be the one you're talking about with the cutting out. Yeah. And I think there's another one, the lap band, which is where they restrict.
Okay,
shrink the stomach essentially.
Yeah, because we started talking about how taking care of yourself really prepares you well for sicknesses, and it just made me remember gastric bypass surgery and how crazy this surgery is. Like, do you know who they prescribe it to, or do you know who they recommend it to?
People that are morbidly obese.
Yes, morbidly obese people. The solution becomes, let's cut out your stomach.
Or part of your stomach.
Part of your stomach. Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine, dude? Like, how wild is that?
Crazy. It is. It's insane. But what's even crazier is the downstream effects of all of that. Like psychological, nutritionally, like your ability to absorb nutrition and different things change. Like it. Yeah, it's bonkers. But the crazy thing is it sometimes works.
Is it a health surgery or is it a cosmetic surgery though? Like, what do you know? Do you understand why people end up getting it?
Yeah, I think it's both.
I just can't. Yeah, like I mean, the some of the stories I've heard, it goes like this. So, I'm a doctor, and my morbidly obese patient comes to me, says I've been struggling with weight all my life. 40 years old. I want to lose weight. I've tried this diet. I've tried that. I've tried exercising. Nothing is working for me, and I continue gaining weight. Right. So as a doctor, I'm analyzing, their medical history and, listening to everything they've been saying. And we come to the conclusion that the only thing left to do is cut their stomach or cut a portion of their stomach off or take out a portion of their stomach in this sort of desperate last attempt to try and help them lose weight. And I guess that's sort of the mentality is that the as a doctor, I will determine that my patient is not capable of doing the necessary things required to lose weight. So I'm going to prescribe them this ridiculous surgery in a last attempt to try and save them, I guess.
It's I look, really, it's actually like an ultimate, like getting that surgery is to some degree an admission of a lack of self-control, specifically in food space, in regards to what you put into your body and also what you do with your body. Now, there is another sort of aspect, like it isn't just those two things. Like I think they play the biggest role, but there's definitely some research coming out now about the sort of chemical soup that we are living in, so to speak, and how some of these chemicals can influence our hormones and have effects with obesity and fat gain and metabolic diseases and things like that. So chicken or the egg kind of thing. I think I don't know which one plays more, but ultimately, I think probably the big factor that people really negate with all of this is obesity is a psychological disease as much as it is a physical disease in that regard. Like, overeating in that regard, there's got to be a reason for it. You know what I mean? And specifically what ends up happening is we eat these hyper palatable foods, which are rich in calories, but devoid of nutrition. So they've got lots and lots of calories, but very little nutrition. Okay. So that's one way that, the industrial food complex has found that they can increase the rate of consumption is if they combine the foods in certain ratios in terms of calories or macros, but they take away the micros, right? And what it does is it gives the body this hit of calories. It goes, oh shit, there's all this energy, but then it hasn't nourished it on that second level, which is the nutrition. Why did we typically eat those calories? Is because they came with nutrition. There was other nutrients in there, the vitamins, the minerals, the cofactors, etc. So when you eat food that has all that calorie or have all those calories, especially in certain ratios like the sugar to fat ratio or carb to fat ratio, but is devoid of the nutrition, it leaves you wanting. It's like social media to some degree, like the videos that get your attention, but they haven't imparted anything of meaning upon you. There's no richness there. We talked about culture last week, and it's a similar kind of thing. It's the topsoil, there's no deep roots. It isn't nourishing. It isn't deeply nourishing. It's very superficial. And that's the same as with the fast food and a good portion of social media is like that as well. But I think it's a psychological disease or a psychological illness, or an inability to understand yourself to some degree and why you develop these patterns or habits around certain foods and what you're actually trying to achieve. So my big thing is, and Lisa Feldman Barrett has a great book on this, How Emotions Are Made. But in that, if you read that book, you sort of understand that a large part of this, people are actually just eating their emotions. They're using food to manage their cognitive states or the state of their body to some degree.
I think a lot of the times where doctors are put in positions to make those sort of decisions, right? It's a game of what is the lesser of the two evils. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but my point is this: is that if they don't recommend that surgery to that patient, right? It's more than likely they will continue down this destructive path and they will die from a heart attack or some sort of disease associated with morbid obesity. And they'll likely die many years before they would have, right? Otherwise. Whereas from the gastric bypass surgery, even though there are long-term negative health effects from that as well, the difference is that with the gastric bypass surgery, it's increasing it's increasing the chances of maybe a bit of a longer life in comparison if it works to reduce the fat, right? Because all that fat around the organs is really what's going to end up killing that person. So if they can somehow reduce that, even though the gastric bypass surgery is also negative, it will give them a surplus of 5 or 10 years in comparison if they didn't do it. And that's sort of the decision that's left to the doctor. And I kind of want people to understand that is that you as a patient, the doctor is analyzing you based on statistics as well. Like sometimes it is based on the individual. However, that when you go to see a doctor thinks that you are not going to make healthy, positive changes, right? Even though they would want you to do so, statistically, you're not going to do it. So the statistics are against you. So it's not that the doctor thinks that this is the best thing for you. It's just not the worst thing for you at the time.
So I think what you're trying to say is it's harm minimization or harm reduction.
Yeah,
Right?
Exactly right.
And then on top of that is, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, which is I think what you're iterating too is it's like the last resort. It's like, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And so this is what the doctors have as their tools. And so this is the last tool that they can kind of use to help you. That and liposuction, right? Actually, we can talk about non-invasive liposuction, which is very interesting, about freezing fat cells. We'll pivot to that in a second. But they have these sort of, they have these coarse grain tools, right? These sort of big hammers to deal with these problems. And that is like the last resort for them. Like, what else can a doctor do? If the doctor's tried to work with you about, explaining the dangers of having all this excess body fat on your body, et cetera, over time, and nothing's changed, well then, okay, let's try this, because it does physically reduce the capacity of your stomach, whether it be through constriction or cutting part of it out. There is a reduction in the size of your stomach, okay, especially acutely, like short term. But there's crazy stuff. Like I've read things about this where people have had the lap band and they've broken the lap band, or they've had the reduction in stomach size, and then over a series of months, the stomach ends up sort of stretching back out to near its capacity pre-surgery, right? So the stomach is very adaptive. And so, if you continue those same habits, it will adapt and grow and stretch and adapt to that load of food. But it's because our bodies are complex dynamic systems, and they're adaptive as well. They adapt to the stimulus that we throw at them or that we put into them. So like it is a kind of like a last resort. But as a patient, you have huge amounts of control if you choose to believe that you do. And if you're willing to do things that are hard and challenging or that are different from what you've previously done, I'm of the belief that almost anything can be achieved that way. And so, like, that's very empowering, but it's also can be a very hard pill to swallow, because it's very easy to blame. Very easy to blame, like, oh, it's my genetics, or I'm big boned, or any number of different things, even though we know that they're not right. Like, none of those are the most useful explanation. Like at a meta level, they're very Moloch though. They make it okay in the moment, but at the meta level they don't. Right. And so we're trying to look for those Metatron models, the win-win, which is like, no, I can take responsibility for my actions and what I choose to do with my body and what I choose to put into my body, and all of these other things. I can have more control over that, and then you'll get different outcomes because of that. And you made a real good point about the statistics. It's interesting because the doctors. We sort of, in science the way it is today, we rely on statistics to inform us as best practice, so to speak, or to do that harm minimization based off statistical models and based off, large sample sizes of people. But then you kind of get condemned to the statistics. And so it's like this weird feedback loop where they self-reinforce, because that's the way the doctor thinks. But, the statistics are made up of people. So if each of the people start to change, then the statistics can change, which also is a feedback loop, right? But these are like these crazy duality, infinity, strange loops that we've talked about with heaps of different stuff.
Yeah, my concern with all of this is the body positivity push that we've really been seeing over the last few years. It kind of concerns me because it's not really educating people into the harms and in the dangers of obesity and overeating and indulging. I think it's quite detrimental, and we're just going to see more and more of these surgeries coming about in the future, because it seems like it's one of those things that people perceive as an easy fix. Oh, I'll just get the gastric bypass surgery. Or they might know someone, oh wow, my aunt had the gastric bypass surgery. She lost 200 pounds. So I'll just get that if I ever need to, right? Fuck trying to lose this weight. Like if I ever need to lose weight, I'll just do that. And so I think we're going to continue seeing more and more of that. And it's kind of sad because realistically, what we should be educating people on is that no, that is literally like the last thing you eat. I don't even think we should be considering it. Actually, I'm going to take back what I was about to say. I don't think we should be considering that. We need to seriously buckle down and put a stop to this body positivity bullshit that's like infecting our minds and giving us a wrong perception of things and really teaching us nonsense that is harming us, essentially.
I agree with you. I don't think we should stop the body positivity. I think we should stop the current instantiation of it, which is that like big is beautiful. Now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if you like, you know, have an affinity towards bigger and you find that beautiful, for sure, go for it. But like what you said with the body positivity movement is it's being sold as this different thing, like big is healthy. And having excess amounts of body fat is healthy. Now, just let me clarify all of that. So, you know, before you jump in the comments, getting on the hate train, what I'm trying to actually say here is excess amounts of body fat is unhealthy, right? And why is that the case? Well, what is fat? And we've discussed this before, but what is fat? Fat is a source of energy. It also makes up the phospholipid bilayer of our cells and provides us access to fat-soluble vitamins and different things like that in the body. It serves many other functions, but largely it's fuel and helps provide some of the structure in the body. Okay, now our brain is made up of like 60% or 60+% fat. Okay, so it has a important role in nervous system, in like myelination of nerves and nerve conductivity and all those different things, right? But fundamentally, body fat on the human body is stored energy. It's excess energy. Okay, and so we do need some amounts of stored body fat. And the reason we need some is because we don't, well, evolutionarily, we haven't always known when our next meal would come, right? We couldn't always just Uber Eats and we couldn't always just go to Macca's, or we couldn't always just go and get food whenever we wanted, right? Previously, we had to hunt our food. We had to gather our food. We had to do all of this work, physical activity, to get food, okay? Times have changed now, and we can just get access to food without doing any real physical activity. You can literally sit on your lounge and order food to your door, okay? So the times have changed, but that's what fat is. Fat on the human body, stored body fat or stored fat is energy. It's stored energy, excess energy that was in surplus of what you actually required to maintain your body and its structures, okay? And so then you were in a position where you could store some of it. Now, it just so happens that the people that evolved were good at storing body fat. So we have that capability within us because we've survived. We're alive today. And so we've survived through our ancestors. You know, each one of us has a living ancestor that goes all the way back to, the first life form, so to speak, right? We have a lineage, an unbroken chain all the way back. And so because of that, we've inherited some of those things to some degree. So we're good at storing fat. Now, if we're in an environment where we continuously overeat, right, and we don't, overeat based off our energy requirements, we consume more calories than what we require, then we will store body fat. Now, some amount of that is good because it's like an insurance policy, right? Women that are too lean won't be able to get pregnant because epigenetically their bodies are like, well, we don't have enough energy stored on this body to guarantee that we can maintain this life form or help to grow a life form for the next 9 months. So we're not even going to worry about doing it. So women need a certain amount of body fat on them, and typically it's a little bit higher than men, mainly because of that, the fact that they carry the baby for 9 months and they develop the baby for 9 months. Let's be honest. That's like when chicks get pregnant, they typically eat more because they're eating for two. All right, that's what they're doing. They're eating food, and part of that food is going into building a baby. So chicks do need a certain amount of body fat. And I think for women, it's anywhere between like 10 and 25% or 22.5% or something like that. So it's a decent range. And then for men, they don't have those same requirements. So for them, it's slightly lower, and it's probably between 8 and 15% is probably like a decent body fat percentage for men. But also understand that in the modern age, we can get away with being just a little bit leaner because we have a lot more food security. We know when our next meal will be. So we don't need as much of that stored body fat. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have a question, or did you finish your point? Because I have a question.
I think so.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about ice therapy for fat loss.
Okay. Yeah. Mad interesting stuff, right? So, should I just quickly do a Google and see if I can find the actual study?
What was the name that you gave it, or that you mentioned it with?
Hey?
The name for it? What was the term that you used?
Oh, okay. So it's non-invasive liposuction. So invasive meaning you cut the body and you go into it. Non-invasive is you don't need to do any of that. I'll just quickly explain the overall mechanism, and then you can riff off it, and I'll try and find the paper.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially, fat cells freeze before your skin cells freeze. So fat freezes at a slightly lower temperature than the skin cells do. And because of that, we can sort of take advantage of it, and we can freeze fat cells without burning or freezing our skin. Okay. Now, what happens when you freeze a fat cell is that it crystallizes, right? It gets solid in its form. Now, when you unfreeze it or you thaw it out, the fat cell breaks. It doesn't maintain its cell structure. It breaks. And so when it's broken, it has no function in the body anymore. So your body metabolizes it and passes it through the system. So you can freeze your fat, and it takes about 30 days typically, right, to see the changes. So from freezing a fat cell and thawing a fat cell to then it getting metabolized and passed through your body is about 30-day cycle. So you can freeze like locally. This is local. You can do this locally. You can freeze your fat cells, and then as they thaw, your body will metabolize them and pass them out of your body. Now, if you do this in a slight calorie deficit, that will be more effective, right? You don't want to be doing this in a surplus, because as you're freezing fat cells, you're probably storing new fat cells. So you're counteracting. It's just going to end up in the same sort of space. If you do this in conjunction with a calorie deficit and a good physical activity plan, you can achieve phenomenal results and targeted. Okay. So this is kind of like being the gold standard of the holy grail of fat loss is how do you target specific areas for fat loss, right? Everyone says you can't target it. Your body's going to do whatever it does. Now, I think blood flow plays a role in that. So I do believe that it isn't just black and white. You can't target. I think you can. And the more blood flow to an area you can get, the more vascularization, or the greater the amount of fat utilization or oxidation can happen in that area. Okay. So notice like things that move a lot typically are a little bit leaner. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, you can freeze fat cells. And as long as you're in a calorie deficit, well, even if you're not, it'll still happen, but you can really see the effect if you're in that calorie deficit and get rid of them. That's non-invasive liposuction. I'll try and find the original paper that sort of discovered this, and it's through a really interesting mechanism. So you riff on that, and I'll have a look while you're riffing.
Dude, that sounds fucking crazy. That sounds really interesting. So basically, what Ruben is telling us is that we just need to freeze our asses, freeze our fat asses, and we'll be ripped, dude. 30 days.
You can.
So Ruben also mentioned something else that's important, right? It's there's no one solution to any problem, right? Like it's not just, oh, I'm going to do non-invasive liposuction and that's it. No, it's just one of many or few things that you ought to do in order to achieve your goals, right? Because ideally, we want to improve our health in many aspects. So doing this treatment, I guess I'm going to call it treatment, is just one other thing that we can do on top of eating healthy, as well as exercising, sleeping right, reducing stress, be that through meditation or breathing exercises, right? It's just not one thing, but it's one of many things that are working together in order to really optimize health. And what I'm actually really interested in, maybe we could sort of analyze this paper is the time frame. I'm kind of curious of how long each treatment needs to be. I'm just assuming that you would be applying ice to the area for maybe like 15, 20 minutes. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So it depends on the mechanism or the mode that you're using, right? So if I know that there are some machines that use liquid nitrogen or dry ice, and they sort of suck the skin and the fat into this little chamber, and they sort of freeze it that way. The other mechanism is you can just use ice packs or ice. Now, typically you want to put a small or thin sheet of cotton or some sort of barrier between your skin and ice directly, so that you don't burn the skin, because you can burn the skin. You can end up with ice burns, right? Or cold burns on the skin. You're trying to put a little bit of a layer there, but you just need it long enough on that local area to freeze the fat cells. Now, you can kind of tell when the fat cells are frozen. One, the area gets a lot harder, right? Like it's a noticeable sort of change. Like if you do a test before and it's like a bit squishy, a bit soft, and then you start to freeze, you take it off and you feel it, you go, oh, that's firming up quite a lot. Once the firmer it gets, the more likely it is to be frozen. And then you can kind of do a weird thing, which is like you can crunch the area, right? After it's been on there for a while, it's very firm. You can sort of crunch it. And if you do have the interoception, right, the ability to sort of feel within your body, you can feel the fat cells crushing, like breaking. You can crush the fuck out of your own fat, essentially. But yeah, it works. So I've done a bunch of stuff with it here at my gym, helping clients. Like lots of people have been on these sort of weight loss journeys, and typically older women, so women 50 and up, who have like stubborn areas, right? Like the classic stubborn area around their bellies and their love handles or their lower backs, so to speak. And this is typically women who have had children, gone through menopause, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they want to feel more confident or comfortable within their bodies, right? Body positivity. And I preach to them, like, you should be proud of yourself. That's not an ugly thing. That's the signs that you've reproduced and you've had this life of interest and variance, and you've reproduced and furthered the human race, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You should wear that with pride. But for them, it's still an issue, and they want to feel confident. So who am I to judge or to say anything else? And so I decided to look for novel strategies, and this is one that popped up. I got numerous examples of women who have done this, and it is about a 30 to 45 days, and then you really see the difference. So we've had women lose up to 16 centimeters off their stomachs just from using this method. Now, I will premise this with all of these women who have done this are all regularly physically active. They train with weights and cardiovascular exercise at least 3 times a week. Okay. And they're all mindful of what they're eating. So they aim to nourish their bodies, and they aim to provide sufficient calories and nutrition based off their physical activity requirements and what they're trying to achieve in their life. Okay. So when we did this with the ice pack stuff, and I still have I have people doing this over time, right? So it's not just like we do little batches of it, like different people are doing this at different times. And so, the women who are still doing this will do it 2 to 3 times a week for between 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the how cold the ice pack is and the ambient temperature around them.
Did you find that article?
I have. It was a bunch of Harvard scientists. So the original one is about kids eating popsicles. Okay. So they had a bunch of kids were sick, and they were trying to figure out ways to get enough calories into their body so that they could maintain maintain their body structures while they were sick. And they couldn't eat or hold anything down. And there was a bunch of the babies, so they didn't really, like, there was time constraints and had a shortage of personnel. So they started giving them popsicles. And then they looked after a period of time, and they realized that all the kids that were having the popsicles had these dimples on their face, like these divots, right? Where they rested the popsicle. And essentially that was how they figured out. They're like, what the hell, that you can freeze fat cells before the skin freezes. So yeah, I have a page of this up here, and I'm just trying to go through and get the exact
wild
paper. Yeah.
What year was that article published?
Give me 2 seconds, guy.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just like, that's a really fascinating way to come about that hypothesis or that conclusion, right? Through the dimples in the face or a popsicle. That's wild.
The one that I've got here is 2008, but I don't know if it's the original. Just give me a second.
It's just something I've never even heard of.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yes, it's interesting that it's not it's not talked more about. Actually, if the concept has been around for an amount of time.
Maybe it's not maybe it's an observational thing. I'm just getting, like, the hardest thing about using Google nowadays is that you just find the people with the best SEO.
I know. Absolutely.
I'm even trying to get on Google Scholar. All right, hold on one sec.
It sounds like you have a lot of personal experience with it, so you have some good antidotes of its functionality, right? And from your experience, it actually does work.
Yeah. So you have to be consistent. I found that you see the noticeable changes when you accompany it with regular physical activity and a calorie deficit, right? So you're eating less calories than your body needs to perform its activities and sustain itself. Okay. So we typically take like 250 to 500 calories less than what their total daily energy expenditure requires, right? So TDEE minus 250 to 500 calories. And then around that range, we see we see phenomenal results. Let's be honest, phenomenal results. Like, 16 centimeters off the stomach. Interesting. I tried this with myself first and noticed decent results. And then my mum would always talk about these things. And so I did it with her like ages ago, and it worked phenomenally for her. She also lost between 14 and 16 centimeters off her torso by doing this. And then I rolled it out, like suggesting it to other people, obviously.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, what you said is keys. It can't be the only thing you do. And when you mentioned that, I remembered I had a friend. I don't think you met him. He was a good friend of mine. Well, he still is. He still is a good friend of mine. But I remember when we were in high school, he got a job working at his. Oh, what was it? It was like it wasn't a DJ studio, but it was a place that rented out DJ equipment. And they also put on shows as well. So he'd be working at the warehouse during the day. And I don't know if you remember, but when we were younger, there were these machines that came out where they had these pads on them, these electrode pads, and you put gel, and then you would like stick in one. What's that?
Yeah, no, that's a different. Yeah. The ab. Oh.
Yeah, it was the ab one. I don't remember what it was called either. But dude, it's so funny. So he would. Every fucking day, dude, we'd go over there and see him, and he'd just be talking to us normally, just nonchalantly, putting the gel on these fucking pads, sticking them on his gut, turning on the machine, and he would just be chilling there, talking with us, and he'd be up, working out, boys, getting that 6-pack, boys, just sitting there.
Did he end up with a 6-pack?
Electrodes. Oh, of course. I mean, I think you know that. No, negative, guy. Negative. Never. You're not gonna get 6-packs from sitting around, dude. It's just not. It's just funny because when we talk about like this non-invasive, what is it? Non-invasive
liposuction.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate this point again and again and again. It's not the only thing that people need to do in order to achieve their goals. Just like my buddy is not going to get a six pack from using that electrode or stimulating machine, whatever, ab machine, whatever it's called, right? It's alongside nutrition, exercise, sleep, all of that stuff that we've been talking about. But I mean, I just wish you guys could just see what it looked like. Oh man, just imagine like this big hairy gut, he just lift up his shirt, put the gel on these electrodes, sticking them on there nonchalantly. We really died laughing every single time we came in to talk to him. He's there. He was committed to it though. I must say, he was using that machine daily. And no, of course, zero changes. Not how it works. But.
So isn't that interesting, right? Because you mentioned that he was committed to it, right? So why couldn't he be committed to actually doing the things that would really work, right? Like, do you know what I mean? It's such an interesting concept. Part of the reason why the electrode-based one won't work is because you're relying on an external electrical impulse to cause a muscle contraction, right? So yeah, you will burn some energy in the contraction of that muscle, but it's largely mediated by the external electric force, as opposed to an internally generated one where you're expending all your own energy to do it, all right? Whereas with the external one, you're relying on you're relying on electricity from the grid to contract your muscles, to contract your muscles. One thing, I've tried one of those machines. All right. So my dad bought one back in the day online. That's how I knew about it. Okay. And I remember trying it. And have you ever tried one?
Yeah, absolutely. I've tried it.
And you crank that, like the first thing we did, me and my brother, when my dad we were playing around with it, first thing we did was like, what happens when you crank it all the way up? And it was like, oh! Like it fucking hurt, bro. Holy shit. Like it was like the worst cramp ever. Oh my God.
I'm going to get so fucking jerked. Yeah.
The worst one was it had like a remote controller. So like I would put it on and my brother would have the controller. So he could just fuck with me, and then you just feel like, yeah, all the way up. So fun.
I think for my buddy specifically, I can talk what I think what was going through his mind. And what I think it is that he thought he is hijacking this sort of, he's beating the system. I think that he's getting the sense of like, oh, I'm beating the system. I'm going to lose weight and get a six pack just from this machine. I don't need to do anything else. So he's committed to it because he feels like he is beating the system. I think that that's where he's getting some sort of pleasure from. And that is how he's able to do it consistently. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think I think that would largely be true for a lot of people that do these things. And I think you just nailed it again with the lap band and the gastric bypass surgery. Like, I feel like that's also why it's an appeal, is because they feel like they're beating the system. Like, they can eat whatever they want. They can have their lifestyle that they love, that they're so comfortable with, even though it doesn't lock them back. And if worse comes to worse, I'll just get that surgery. That way, I got to do all the things that I wanted to do and didn't have to change my lifestyle. And then I just get that surgery and it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Rubes,
but you always pay.
Yeah.
Hey?
Is your camera on?
Yeah.
Fuck, it's off on my end. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. If it's
on
your end. So
it's on.
Okay. I think I had first started hearing about this concept from Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. It might have been when they did a podcast together. I can't remember. But Jordan Peterson, you might know about this more than I do. But he was suffering from an autoimmune disease, right? Did you hear about this?
I don't know 100%. I know he struggled with depression and things like that. Oh, actually, I do sort of. Okay, so his diet used to be like peanut butter and jam sandwiches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he used to feel like shit all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's about as deep as I know.
Okay. So I don't remember what, this is going to fuck my whole point up. But anyways, I can't remember
I'll
exactly
Google it
what.
while you talk.
Okay. I can't remember exactly what he was suffering from, but essentially he started doing an elimination style diet. And the one that he went with is the carnivore diet, right? Where he's only eating animal sourced things. So obviously like meat. And the majority of his diet is from meat. And in doing so, he was able to reduce the symptoms of the sickness or the disease that he had. And I believe he was even able to reduce it completely, sort of like reverse the disease, or in some sense sort of put a limitation on it, or sort of control it, where he was able to, be healthy again. And elimination style diets are essentially used for that, or used to treat certain sicknesses. Have you heard this concept before?
Yes. And have used them myself, and have used them with many other people. Here's one. I think it says he, from a young age, struggled with, oh no, that's Michaela. She struggled with rheumatoid arthritis from a very young age.
That's an autoimmune disease, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. Autoimmune disease. And so it's likely a similar thing. But yeah, okay. So what are, elimination diets are essentially like, you start eliminating things and see how you feel. And again, eventually you sort of, if there are environmental or food-based or consumption things that you're consuming that are having negative effects on your body, or that don't love you back, is the way I like to think about it, then as you eliminate foods, you find those things and you can get rid of them. And then you stop poisoning or inflaming your body, or putting those things in that don't love you back.
How sustainable do you think an elimination diet is? Do you think it's something you can do indefinitely?
So are you asking, can I eliminate things indefinitely? Or once you've eliminated all of the things that fuck you up, can you maintain a healthy diet or nutrition, or health status on such an eliminated diet?
Yeah, exactly. The latter.
Okay, the latter. Okay. It depends. It depends on what you've eliminated. So if you eliminate, almost everything, and you can only eat muscle meat from animals, then I would say that that's largely unsustainable, because there just isn't enough nutrition in muscle meat, right? From animals. So it'll depend on to the degree. Now, elimination diet is one aspect of a bigger picture, which is environmental toxins as well, environmental stresses, lifestyle, such as daily physical activity, sun exposure, sleep levels, sleep quality, water intake, water quality, your ability to breathe. All right. So just mouth breathing can make you really sick. Mouth breathing is not ideal. Mouth breathing can inhibit brain function. It can inhibit your cardiovascular function. Breathing through our nose pressurizes and humidifies air. So, it's very important to, it's a better mechanism to inhale air through our nostrils than it is through our mouth. Hence why when you get really sick and you get a bit of a blocked nose, don't feel as good. Part of that is because of the reduction in oxygen intake through your nostrils. So all of these things play a role, right? They're all moving parts in this complex system. Now, how sustainable is it? Okay, so like I said, it depends on how eliminated that diet is, and also just focusing on that one aspect, is likely not going to be like, if you've got to eliminate almost everything to feel good, then it's likely not just that the foods the foods you're putting into your body, it's likely some other factors as well. And you should start to look at those. And once you start to tick those boxes, right, figure out what loves you back in those spaces, then you're likely going to be able to start adding more foods back in.
I see. Yeah. I remember I saw this nutrition documentary a while back, and this was like just before the veganism craze sort of took off. I believe
Game changers.
that might have been it. And they were talking about the whole food or raw whole food plant-based diet for cancer treatment. Is that the one?
Well, maybe. Yeah.
And I guess that's essentially a similar concept. And like I don't want to use any sort of documentary as a reference, because all of them are very, they what's it called? They
sensationalize whatever they're trying to do, and they cherry pick.
That's the word, cherry pick. Certain things.
However, I got that from that.
Yeah, that's nice guy. My mining skills are good to go, guy.
Next level.
So in that documentary, I believe they discussed that, how cancer patients were able to reverse cancer or stop it in its tracks by adopting a whole food, raw whole food plant-based diet, something along those lines. And essentially, this isn't what they said, but essentially it's that concept. It's that elimination diet. And I have no idea what studies they looked at or who they talked to, but essentially that concept which they mentioned is that elimination diets are basically used in order to sort of improve health, because the body is obviously getting sick because you're putting some sort of toxins into it, and by eliminating certain things from your diet, you can reduce the toxicity, essentially, right?
Yeah, if that is the underlying mechanism. So
if that is it. Yeah.
Let's quickly discuss, what is cancer? All right. So do you have some sort of, like conception of what it is, or like a vague idea? Like I think most people, like everyone sort of knows cancer, the word, so to speak, and they've got some sort of idea, but I don't know if people really, really know or understand what cancer is.
No, like I actually have no idea. I just know that cancer cells proliferate in a way where other cells do not. And they're able to, I guess, sort of mask themselves, infiltrate healthy cells, manipulate the genome of those cells, change them, make them become cancer, and they can spread in that sort of sense. And they sort of take over areas of the body and reproduce. It's like, I mean, that's pretty much the extent of what I know. And then eventually it has a bad ending.
Okay, so you're correct on a fair bit of that. So what is cancer? Well, cancer is when the cells of your body no longer maintain or keep. Sorry, I'll start again. Cancer is when the cells of your body, or certain cells in your body, decide to go against the overall organism. Okay? So what makes you is the coordination and the collaboration of all the different cells that make up all your organs and everything that is you. Okay? And they all abide by the rules. They all follow their instructions. Your liver cells stay as liver cells. Your skin cells stay as skin cells. Yeah? Your lung cells stay as lung cells, etc. And they all play their role in the greater whole, which is Polska. Okay? They're all doing their job to be part of you. Okay? They're fulfilling their roles. Cancer is when the cells decide, fuck you, bruh. I am going to do what I want. I'm just going to keep growing. I'm not going to grow to a certain point and then stop. I'm not going to stay here and do this role. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I want to just keep proliferating. I want to keep multiplying. I want to keep growing. That's a cancer, right? Now, how can a cancer do that, right? So our cells get delivered energy and nutrients from our blood, okay? And so they're fed through the vascular system, right? And that's how the nutrients are supplied. Now, cancer cells, they are able to leverage a different pathway for energy production, which is this fermentation pathway. And so they typically run off sugars that can be that are fermentable, right? And they do that sort of in-house, and they have their own source of energy, which allows them to continue their own growth, which is that proliferation. Okay. But essentially think about it. The simplest way to think about it is cancer is when all of your body is wanting your cells to go in this one direction and be you. And cancer says, fuck off, we're going that way. We're not going there anymore. We're going to go this way, and we're going to do what we want. We're not going to listen to the overall instructions of the organism. We're going to do what we want. So to me, cancer is an indication that somebody is divergent in their life, right? Part of their body is going in one direction, and a group of the cells or a cell decides, hey, I don't want to be going that direction. I want to go this direction. So it's like a misalignment of your cells in your body. Does that kind of resonate? Feel free to ask questions or clarify. I'm not sure if I explained that very well.
No, you explained that really clear. I understand. Divergent. Okay. So how can we get all the cells to go the same way again?
It's alignment, right? Like a very common thing. My grandmother died of multiple cancers, and I always had this weird sort of intuition. I don't know, like a weird sort of vibe. Like I spent a lot of time with my grandmother growing up. We have long conversations about life and the universe and all these different things. And one thing that was apparent to me was made aware to me, was that when she was her first child, so my mum is the oldest child, but she's not really. They had a child before her, and that child died at a very young age. And her and her husband, my grandfather, both blamed each other, but never spoke about the circumstances. So I was in a unique position where I actually heard both sides of the story, because I was that independent third party, right? I listened to his version of the story, and I was able to listen to her version of the story. And what became apparent to me is that they both blamed each other. They'd never spoken about it, right? So they never really dealt with it. And it was actually neither of their faults to some degree, right? Unfortunately, certain things just happen. So it's a sad story. The child drowned at a very young age, but it wasn't actually any of their fault. It was a third party's fault. They let water out of a certain place that wasn't meant to be let out. They incorrectly let it out, and that caused this thing to flood, which then caused him to sort of drown. Or to drown, not sort of drown, to drown. Okay, so anyway, we go over that. But anyway, my grandmother had multiple cancers and ended up dying of cancer. And to me, I was like, it seems as if she has some dis-ease within her. And she held that dis-ease within her ever since that event. And that grew inside of her. And I feel like cancers in some circumstances, maybe even in all circumstances, I don't know, but at least in some circumstances is kind of like that, where you have this thing that hasn't been dealt with. And I feel like part of your cells might be able to tell that, or they might want to go in this different direction, or because you haven't dealt with it, you're kind of not as aligned in your true life as you can. And then so most of your cells keep going in that direction, but some of your other cells try and explore this other direction that you maybe should have gone into, if that kind of makes sense. And that's that divergence where they separate. Now, with another interesting thing about that story is when that happened, she was so distraught that the local doctor advised that this will be too hard for her to deal with, So they advised that she should just be medicated or put asleep. So they essentially put her in like a coma for a week. So this happened. It was a massive emotional, traumatic experience. And then the whole phase of her dealing with it and going through that trauma never really happened because they essentially put her in a medically induced coma. And when she woke up, she had no recollection of what happened to her son. And then it was never dealt with after that. So there's this huge, divergent period where none of that was actually addressed or dealt with. And I think that can be the start of dis-ease in a lot of people too, where things aren't dealt with, things aren't done, or you should be doing something, but you don't. So part of you knows you should be doing this thing. Part of your cells know you should be going this way, but you keep going this way. And that creates that divergence. And I think that could be a partial explanation for cancer.
Ruse, I've often thought something very similar, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, because cancer is just this widely prevalent thing, but also another widely prevalent thing is what you were mentioning. People having these sort of emotional, or I could even just say these certain stresses inside them, which they hold on to for years and years and years. And that possibly could be the initiating cause for cancer, right? Because there are, the percentage of people who get cancer is astronomical. Like a shit ton of people get it, right? And most, if we look at everyone it's very difficult to analyze what are the environmental outcomes for cancer, right? I think one of them where they've drawn some associations, but I can't even really speak to the articles because I don't know them. But for example, smoking and lung cancer, right? I think there might be some strong associations that they've drawn between that. But again, I'm not really sure, and I can't really speak to that all that much. But I'm just thinking.
Can I just say one thing on that real quick? While you just mentioned that. Imagine if lung cancer is caused by some of your lung cells, you're smoking all the time, and some of your lung cells are like, fuck off, like stop. I'm sick of getting burnt by this smoke, right? Like stop it. And then over time, they're just like, fuck this. Like I'm sick of being a lung cell. I don't want to be a lung cell anymore. I'm going to go do something else. And that's lung cancer. Like imagine if that's how it turns out. Like that would just be crazy.
I like it. I mean, it's possible, right? Because so what I wanted to say is that I think stress for sure is a large factor in many diseases, and cancer is probably just another one of those things. I mean, that does not seem far-fetched to me at all. Your hypothesis or like the story that you just told us and why you think it was your aunt, right? Who died from cancer. Your grandmother died from cancer, and it's because she was holding on to this thing for so many years. Like I think that's very plausible, and I've often thought about that as well. Is that it's quite possible that the majority of cancers is stemmed from this stress or this emotional, this stress that
trauma,
that people have experienced and have carried on throughout their lives and have not properly diagnosed it or have properly treated it.
Correct. Or dealt with. So the other important thing that you're saying is, remember we did the ep on stress. So there's two types of stress. You have distress and then you have eustress. You have distress and then you have eustress. Eustress is the good one, is the positive that you can get these positive adaptations from. And distress is that bad one. So this is distress, right? And then we talk about it. It's actually built into the word. Dis-ease. Disease, okay, is dis-ease. And so that can be psychological and that can be physical, right? And so if you do have these these things that are undealt with, that aren't resolved, that you haven't ordered, so to speak, or you haven't resolved in some way, shape, or form, then they live within inside you. And that is a divergence. All right? There is a dis-ease within yourself, and that can manifest as disease over time. Like that's what dis-ease is. That's what disease is, like it's a dis-ease over time.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And sorry, and I just remembered what I wanted to say about all these environmental factors is that you always hear about all these cancer-causing things. I mean, up until there's this roof that they used when they built this area here, all these houses in the neighborhood I live in. They used this type of roof that is now illegal to use because it's a cancer-canceling roof. Apparently, it has some sort of. I don't know if that. Yeah, carcinogenic.
Yeah.
And you always hear about all these things like, oh, this is cancer causing. This is cancer causing. This is cancer causing. It just seems like you just breathing is cancer causing. You know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of these things we could for sure associate with cancer. But my point is that we can associate almost anything with cancer. And I think that's because we don't actually really know, right? So we're just like associating anything that's carcinogenic with cancer. And that's just basically living causes cancer then. Breathing air causes cancer.
Michael Levitt has a really good talk about this. He's a biologist, phenomenal guy. He does a much better explanation of the cancers doing their own thing or not adhering to the overall control structure of the body. But he has a good talk of why robots don't get cancer. And anyone that is interested in this kind of stuff, I highly recommend listening to it. But look, what you were just saying about the carcinogens in the roof and things like that, look, there are absolutely things that can irritate your cells and make them want to not be part of your body anymore, right? They're like, well, if you're going to stay here, body, if you're going to stay in this environment where this thing is pissing me off constantly, I'm just going to go do my own thing. And that's cancer, right? So I think fundamentally what cancers are telling us is like, there is a divergence in this person's life. Either they're not in the right environment, they're not eating the right thing, they're not doing the right things, they're not being true to themselves in some way, shape, or form. And then that's where you start to see the cancers. And this is a typical story. You hear about people that go into remission from cancer, which is like, they had to do some life-changing thing, and then their cancer went into remission. Or they dealt with some big trauma or dealt with some issue that they'd been putting off for a long time, and then the cancer goes away. And another interesting thing about cancer is there's a good study on cancer in breast cancer and breast tissue, where they took cancerous tissue from a breast, the breast cancer tissue, and they put it into breast tissue that wasn't cancerous or into the different environment. And the cancer stopped being cancer. Like it decided to adhere to the rules of being breast tissue. And so what that tells me is that there is definitely an environmental thing here. And so I think what it's really trying to say is there is a misalignment within your body or in your environment. And that if you have these things being presented, then that's a signal. The cancer is a signal to tell you that you're misaligned in some way, shape, or form. And then it's up to you to then try and align better. Whether that's dealing with psychological things or dealing with things physically, either your physical space, what you do with your body, what you're putting into it, whatever. But in those two spaces, you figure it out. Where are you misaligned? Where are you not being true to yourself, so to speak? Like, how can you get all your cells to want to be all your cells? That's really what I take away from that explanation of cancer is like, that's what cancer is telling you is that like some of your cells don't want to be part of you because they're not convinced that you're going in the right direction.
All right. I think Danny Dengue is going to get some rest. I got a big day tomorrow.
Yes. And align yourself, guy. Look after yourself. Make sure you get some sun. Thanks for watching, idiots. Appreciate it.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video with your friends and family, and comment, talk some shit. Oh, I keep forgetting we're supposed to do the reverse psychology thing, guy.
Yeah, don't watch, don't like, don't comment, don't share it with your nemesises. Don't try and piss people off by sharing our stupid takes with other people. That's for sure. Definitely don't do that. But yeah, thanks again. Hope you feel better, guy. Look after yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, you can call me Danny Dengue, or
Danny Dengue.
or maybe Dengue Free Danny, or Dengue Free Daniel. There, it just sounds better than
Dengue
Polster, right?
Danny.
Dengue Danny.
Dengue Danny. I like
Dengue
Dengue
Danny.
Danny. Yeah, I like that.
More
vibe.
than Danny Dengue.
Yeah, I prefer the dengue first.
Yeah. It's like identify. I identify with dengue. So
Yeah,
you will
identify
call me,
as a virus.
Yeah, I identify as dengue. So you will call me Dengue Danny from now on.
And
all right.
Hot to touch, baby. All right, guys, this is getting weird. We got to get out of here. Have a lovely rest of your evening, sir. Enjoy.
You too, bro.
Peace.
I love you, dude. Peace.
Love you too, guy. Bye.